Welcome to Empowered with Elizabeth Naumovski. Women are all different, whether it's their body type, hair color, eye color, and skin color. Today's show is about something that we all have in common: skin, hair, and nails. Now, we all worry about our skin, hair, and nails, especially as we age and we go through menopause. Today's show is about your skin, hair, and nail awareness so that you can take care of it and appreciate your skin, hair, and nails better. Joining me today is Dr. Ann Curtis, a dermatologist at Dermatology on Bloor in Toronto. We'll be discussing the situations that we all go through in life, starting from our 20s to growing older. Welcome, Dr. Curtis. So good to see you.
Great to see you as well.
So this is just going to be a basic show about educating people about their skin, hair, and nails. So let's begin. How should I look after my skin in my 20s?
The 20s is all about prevention because your skin is in pretty good shape, but you want to keep it that way. And the main thing to prevent is sun damage. So it's all about sun protection, sun avoidance, but using a really good sunscreen. Other things, if you're prone to acne, there's special ways that you would look after your skin. And of course, you want to maintain your general health because your skin will reflect your general health. So sleep well, eat well, exercise.
So what's the common mistake that most people make with their sun protection?
They don't use enough. They think they don't need it unless it's bright, sunny, and July. And they think 30 is a big number. And what they don't realize is you only get about a third of the number on the bottle because the way a sunscreen, the number on the sunscreen, it's a government standard. It's done the same around the world. They apply it in a thick layer like mayonnaise on the plate to test it. So if that's not the way you put it on, and that isn't the way you put it on, you're not getting the number on the bottle. They've done that study. They hand people sunscreen. They say apply generously, and then they measure what they've done, and they've got about a third. So if you're applying a 30, you're getting a 10. So keep that in mind. You still need the hat and, to stay out of the bright sunlight, seek shade.
So what number do we actually need to use? Because you see stuff that are, SPF 5, SPF 100. And, everybody hears so many different stories about it. But what do we need to protect our skin, especially our face?
Yeah, I recommend a 60. Because a 60, so that's really a 20. And the difference between a 10, which is what you get from applying a 30, and a 20, which is what you get from applying a 60, that's the steep part of the curve. So there is a big difference. And usually the success is that you're not tanning. So if you're applying your sunscreen generously, but you're still getting a tan, then that doesn't cut it. You've got to be reapplying it. You've got to be in the shade more. You've got to use your hat more. Conversely, if you are using a 30 and your skin is lily white with no trace of a tan, it's working.
So
clearly not out much.
We talked about prevention in your 20s. Now, how do I change my skincare as I go into menopause?
So your skin will definitely be drier in menopause. And that's something that people don't necessarily make an adjustment for because they have a routine. This is the things they've always done. This is the cleanser they've always used. And then their skin is drying out and they're kind of puzzled. And so when you see that your skin is drier, you have to make those adjustments. Like you cleanse less often, you use a gentler cleanser and a lot more moisturizer and richer moisturizer.
So other than your skin drying out, what else happens to it as your skin ages?
So there's a whole process. When you look at somebody's face and you see that they're older, the things you're seeing, there's loss of bone support. There's volume loss. So that's where, people put a bit of filler in to restore that volume loss. There's loss of skin elasticity. Now, part of that is related to sun damage because the sun damages the elastic fibers. You get something called solar elastosis, where those thin fibrils that are supposed to be supporting your skin and giving you good elasticity, they go sproing and they're just useless little balls of elastin. Your skin gets thinner. Part of that is also sun damage, and the vessels are not as well supported. So people who are older may even notice that they're getting like a little bruise from nothing, that, it takes almost nothing to bruise. And it's because the vessels are not supported because the skin is thinner.
Okay. So When we come back, we're going to talk more about skin, and then we're going to cover hair and nails and other things as well. So please don't go away. We will be back with more of Dr. Curtis in a few moments. Thank you. Welcome back to Empowered with Elizabeth Naumovski. We're discussing empowerment on skin, nails, and hair care throughout our lives. And with me is Dr. Curtis, who's a dermatologist. Dr. Curtis, what should I do if I have acne-prone skin?
Well, first you want to be careful that you don't overdo the moisturizer. Sometimes people moisturize just because they kind of think they should, even though their skin is oily. And really, you should moisturize to the extent that you're dry and not overdo it, because if you use balms that are too rich, that can trigger the acne. You also need to be careful about what you're doing, for example, in the way of contraception. If you know you're acne prone and you choose the birth control pill, often that will help. If you choose a hormonal IUD, sometimes that makes things worse. So it's just one more issue to raise with your doctor when you're talking about contraception. Mention that you're acne prone and make that part of the conversation.
Now, what happens if you're the opposite and your skin is super, super dry and, you try to moisturize a lot and you get nothing?
So you're super, super dry and you're still acne prone?
Or no acne, just really, really dry.
Right. So if your skin is really dry, then you can moisturize to your heart's content. You want to make sure that you don't over cleanse, though, because sometimes that's contributing to the dryness. And again, people, they're showering twice a day. They shower to wake up in the morning and then they shower again after they work out. And if their skin is really dry, I'll say, look, you're only allowed one shower a day. You pick whether you want it to wake up or you want it after, but you don't get both. Also, they may be using too much cleanser. It may be too dry a cleanser, like some of the deodorant bars can be quite drying, but also just too much. Like, if they've got dry patches on their arms, then they don't need, when they shower every day, to apply cleanser to their arms every day. They can be rinsing some of the areas and just using the cleanser, in the armpits and the groin and the soles of the feet, areas that, maybe they're a little bit dirtier or have an odor to them.
And you know what? I'm going to go back and say, okay, so now that you've got dry skin and it is acne prone, what do you do then?
Now that is a difficult problem. And I'll explain to people, you're treading a fine line, because if you moisturize like you want to for the dry skin, you're going to trigger your acne. If you try to use a lot of the surface acne prescriptions, which tend to be drying, then you're not going to tolerate those very well at all. So it's a tougher thing to tread that fine line, to try and stay in the middle. And sometimes for the acne control, that's where we might look to something oral rather than those drying topicals that we know the person is not going to tolerate.
So a lot of women, as they get older, find out that they have rosy cheeks, or rosacea. Are the two the same? If you have rosy cheeks, do you actually have rosacea?
Most often. Rosacea is so common and people read about it like in a women's magazine and they recognize themselves when they hear about it, and they're right. There are different types of rosacea. So some people have just the rosy cheeks. Over time, the rosy cheeks can evolve into little, train track kind of visible blood vessels. Some people have acne rosacea, like they have pimples as well. Red bumps, they tend to respond actually quite well to some of our treatments. And then there's ocular rosacea, where they may have dryness and irritation of the eyes.
So a lot of other women get more bumps on their skin as they get older. Is that normal?
There are many kinds of bumps that you can get as you get older, and many of them are genetically determined. So it isn't necessarily anything that you're doing wrong, but people will get like little, slightly yellowish, just little raised bumps on their forehead. And that's the oil glands. So this is the T-zone, the oily part of the face. And the oil glands get bigger. That's called sebaceous hyperplasia. Sometimes women, especially ones with a bit darker skin, may get like little brown bumps, but tons of them. And that's called dermatosis papulosa nigra. My students, I have them, they'll Google that and they'll get a picture of Morgan Freeman because he's classic.
So,
but you can get like blood vessel bumps. There's lots of kinds of things you start to get more of with time.
okay, so when we come back, we'll continue talking about the skin, and then we'll segue off to hair and nails in a few moments, in a few minutes, when we come back with Dr. Curtis and more dermatology. Welcome back to Empowered with Elizabeth Naumovski, where we're discussing empowerment on skin, nails, and hair care throughout our lives. Now, Dr. Curtis, I'd like to ask you, if one of your parents had skin cancer, should you actually worry, or is that just, indicative of that parent?
Well, it matters a little bit which type of skin cancer they had. So the most common type of skin cancer right now is basal cell carcinoma. About 1 in 6 Canadians get it. And that's really related to sun exposure. So what you will have inherited from the parent is the fair skin and perhaps the lifestyle that all of you were at the cottage together. So you're at risk for that reason. If your parent had melanoma, that's more worrisome for a couple of reasons. First of all, melanoma is a more serious skin cancer. It's potentially fatal. And secondly, it does have some genetic loading to it. So, I will tell people first degree relatives. So, that's your parents, your siblings, or your children. A first degree relative with a melanoma is a 10 times increased risk in melanoma for you.
So if you know that, your parent has melanoma, what should you do to prevent yourself from getting it?
It's all about sun protection because the more sun you get, the more moles you'll have. The more moles you have, the more risk you have. But it's never too late to do that sun protection. So, of course, I see lots of people who are adults, and you will have had 50% of your lifetime sun exposure by the time you're 18. So to some extent, they've already done a lot of damage. They already have a lot of moles. But I will tell people that melanoma is a 2-step procedure. So step 1, you got all that sun, you've got the moles. We can't change that. But step 2, you get sun on the moles. You push one of them over the edge. That's what you can avoid. So good sun protection is always worth doing.
So I'd like to move on to hair now. How should I look after my hair?
Well, healthy hair will reflect your general health. So again, eating well, sleeping well. There are different issues that people will have with their hair. So for example, if you have an issue with iron deficiency, that can result in hair loss. If you have the type of hair that you want to keep very, very tightly braided, there is a risk of something called traction alopecia. So chronic pull on the hair, you can lose hair, and you can lose it permanently if it goes on long enough. So it is definitely something you want to be aware of. You want to have good general health to have healthy hair. So you don't want to be vitamin D deficient. And of course, since I'm always preaching sun protection, I'm also telling people they can take vitamin D, 2,000 units a day.
So, okay, so we've taken the vitamin D. We've been, we're eating healthy, but we're still losing our hair. What's happening? Is this a bigger picture?
Well, there are different types of hair loss. So, the 3 really common ones, there's the kind where you have sudden and dramatic shedding. And people are actually quite frightened by that because they literally see their hair coming out in clumps. And that can be called telogen effluvium. And there's a bunch of triggers, basically anything that's a shock to the system. So delivering a baby, having surgery, a major stress in your life, weight loss, you suddenly drop 20 or 30 pounds and the body thinks it's a famine and it's not going to waste any resources on hair. It views hair as a frill. So telogen effluvium, that's one cause. Fortunately, it's often self-limited. So you deliver the baby, but then your body returns to a kind of a normal state and the hair loss will gradually stop. There is something called androgenetic alopecia. So that's your female pattern or male pattern hair loss. So that one is a genetic one. And you look at your family history, you kind of take an average of all of your relatives. It's not one side or the other side, it's just all of them. And if you have a bunch of people with significant hair loss, that may be something that you have to sort of take into consideration. And then, of course, there's the kind where you get round bald spots, often noticed by a hairdresser. Fortunately, the hairdressers are often quite reassuring about it because they've seen it before. It's fairly common. And that's an autoimmune one where the immune system, for reasons best known to itself, has decided that that particular patch, we got to go for that patch.
Okay, so when we come back, we're going to talk about a flaky scalp and a little bit more on the hair, and then we're going to segue to nails because you and I have talked about, getting a mani-pedi and nails and cuticles. So I know that a lot of people are going to be really excited to hear about what you have to say when, when you come back in a couple of minutes. So please don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Empowered with Elizabeth Naumovski. We're discussing empowerment on skin, nails, and hair care through our lives with Dr. Ann Curtis, a dermatologist at Dermatology on Bloor in Toronto. So let's continue with these basic questions. My mother has varicose veins. How do I prevent it?
So there's a genetic component to varicose veins because it's all about the support in the wall of the vein for the pressure that it undergoes, because there's a column of blood that goes from the floor up to your heart. And the heaviest pressure is at the bottom of that column. And maybe your vein has genetically a lot of muscle supporting it. And unfortunately, maybe genetically it doesn't. So if you have a mother with varicose veins and you suspect that that may be in your future, the most important thing is support hose. And not everybody is enthused about wearing support hose all the time. So the most important time is during pregnancy. And I really think that for the duration of your pregnancy, you could wear the support hose every day. For the rest of the time, you're not likely to wear it on a hot day. But if you can wear it 50% of the time, then it'll take twice as long for things to get worse, because you're not going to get worse when the veins are being externally supported. You're only going to get worse on the days you're not wearing your support hose.
Okay, so let's keep talking about legs. Some people get flaky patches, and then they think in the wintertime and on their legs, and they think it's ringworm. Is that what it is?
Usually not. So I hate the word ringworm because, of course, it's not a worm either. It's a fungus. It's like athlete's foot, but it's on the leg. Anyway, no, it's more often nummular dermatitis. So nummular refers to coin-shaped, so these round, dry patches, and that's usually over-cleansing. So people are just taking too many showers, they're using too drying a cleanser, they're enthusiastically doing extra cleaning where they've got the dry, flaky patch, which is the exact reverse of what they should be doing. They should be doing less cleaning there, and they're not using rich enough creams.
Okay, so this is one that I was surprised about, actually. Flaking on your eyelids.
Yeah, it's a common problem because it's very thin, delicate skin, and it's not got much in the way of oil at all. So again, the kind of routine that you use to wash your face, that's great for the T-zone, which is oily, and maybe even okay for the cheeks, which are less oily, still maybe too much for the eyelids, which have so little oil. So if people are having the least bit of dryness and irritation of their eyelids, I tell them to wash their face like they're a raccoon, so this area, you're not going to touch it. You're going to sort of dampen your face and put on your cleanser and rinse off your cleanser and pat it dry. And you never touch the eyelids because they're just too dry.
Interesting. Okay, hands. Let's talk about nails. And one of the things that you and I have talked about before is cuticles. So many women go and get a mani-pedi and they cut their cuticles. What do you think about that?
Well, the cuticle is useful. I mean, it's kind of like tonsils. People used to take tonsils out because what good are tonsils? Well, it turns out tonsils have a function. So do cuticles. The role of the cuticle is to seal the fold down to the nail. So that there's no opening there. Once you push the cuticle back, then stuff can get under that fold. And it's a nice, warm, moist home for bacteria and yeast. So you actually want to leave the cuticle there to make sure that bacteria and yeast don't get under.
And then quickly, we've got less than 30 seconds. How do I look after my hands?
Lots and lots of moisturizer, and be kind to them. Wear gloves if it's a bit cold. Don't let them just get icy. But moisturizer is the most important thing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Curtis. I really appreciated your words of wisdom and the time that you took out to explain all the basics to us, because quite frankly, there is no book that'll help us out. So thank you.
You're welcome.
You heard it from Dr. Curtis. No matter what age you're at, your 20s, 30s, 40s, or even higher, wear sunscreen on your face, neck, and ears every day. And make sure that you're actually wearing a moisturizer or a sunscreen with an SPF of 60. Protect yourself from the sun's rays when it's raining, snowing, dark, and foggy, and take good care of your skin, because once it's damaged, it's too late. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm trying to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Bye for now.